Here we go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Worldview's Cafe for June, where we're going to be talking about leadership saturation. In our invitation and in our newsletters, we were writing about the the points on the screen where we talked about an inspired vision um, type of leadership. The more traditional way of looking at leadership being the inspired, visionary, charismatic type of leading can be ineffective in systems and processes, and that's where we kind of place management. And to implement it, it's lacking. That middle managers often act as a bridge between strategy and execution, yet we feel they are underserved in development programs because it's all about leadership, um, and that middle managers can be the missing link, because they need to lead teams, and there the word lead is again, but also manage the resources effectively, and of course, so much more. And then with the rise of hybrid work models, and then the world focusing on the volatility and uncertainty and complexity of the world at the moment, and the big focus on employee well-being, especially since COVID, it's really risen. There's this new emphasis on the human side of management, and the feeling that managers should be equipped to lead with agility and empathy while maintaining productivity. And in a lot of the courses, the leadership stuff is more about the plan, the organize, the control, where leading is all about being charismatic and visionary and inspirational and all of those things. And also, before we go on, I just want to say that we'll be talking about middle managers today, but also frontline managers, and that in today's discussion, I don't want um, to think of it as different. We were working, me and Bali were working in one of the big banks yesterday. We did a team development session, and it was quite a senior leadership team in one of the divisions. And we've worked with the people that report into them, and we've worked with some of the people that report into them. And we were thinking yesterday, if you work in a place like a big bank with 40,000 odd employees, to talk about middle management, you actually talk about so many layers of management. And then if you're working in the smaller organizations, there might only be one layer of middle management. And sometimes when we talk about frontline, we think about the supervisors that is managing the workers, the customer facing workers. So I think in today's session, when we talk about management, depending on the size of the organization, of course, it might be middle, there might be numerous layers of middle in the organization, or in the smaller organizations, there might be one layer. So what I'd like for us to talk about today is, why is there so much emphasis on leadership development and so little emphasis on management development? And what is the effect of that? And in the cafe today, we'll have 2 breakaway rooms. There's not many of us, Bali, I don't know, maybe 2 rooms if you're setting it up. But it'll still be nice to get away, talk a little bit in a smaller group, and then back into the bigger group. So the first one, I'm going to share something with you now and then ask for your opinions, and then going to share a little bit of the research and the stuff that I could come up with while preparing for this cafe and trying to test my theories and my thinking. And then we'll have some more conversations about that a little bit later in the cafe, and get some feedback from everybody. So this is just one of those very typical, what is a leader and what is a manager infographics that you get anywhere on LinkedIn, and you see it in management programs. And I think if I think about 14, 15 years ago, this was everywhere, and that was even before LinkedIn was there. Where there's this disconnect between what is a leader and what is a manager. And if you look at this one, for example, the manager apparently only focuses on the short-term goals, while the leader is the one looking at the greater goals. The leader thinks of people as people, and the horrible manager only see titles or organizational charts. And you can go down the list. This specific one where it says the leader takes responsibility if a team falls short, while the manager blames the team for the problems. And yeah, fosters ideas versus assigns duties, inspires trust versus relies on control. And so often when we facilitate leadership and management development programs, quite often in one of the first modules, we would have this conversation with the managers or the leaders in the room to say, so what is leadership and what is management? And quite often there's quite a conversation around it in terms of so what is the role of the leader and what's the role of the manager and what's your role? And eventually the realization is sort of like, okay, it is definitely a yin yang. And having a great leader with very poor management skills can lead to bad leadership and the other way around. And that there's no reason where a manager shouldn't have to lead. And we talk about leadership as a choice, not necessarily as a position or a title, and that it's a way of being, but still there needs to be some kind of a connect. And the interesting thing in many of our programs is that by the end of module 6 or module 12 or whatever, we ask them, what was your biggest takeaway of this program? And quite a lot of these managers say, the role of management and leadership and the yin yang relationship of management and leadership. And I never thought of it that way. I always thought the two are two distinct roles and it's two distinct things. And it's not because we are trying to force our opinion on them. We're having conversations to say, so why is it so different? And this penny then usually drops somewhere during the program, and quite often it's the big takeaway for the managers attending our program. So I'd like for us to start with a discussion in the breakaway rooms. So just introduce yourself if you don't know each other. There's a few familiar faces and a few newer faces here today. And then just share, what are you seeing in your work? If you're in an organization, what's happening in that organization? If you're a OD practitioner, what are you seeing in your work in the organization and even in the country, in South Africa? Is there more emphasis on either when we talk about how do we fix things, how do we make organizations better, how do we grow, where do we spend our development budget? And why do you think that is? And what is the effect of that? Can you see an effect on this? Yeah, so we'll have like a 12-minute discussion or so of that, and then we'll bring you back. We'll get some feedback, and then we'll continue with the presentation. Bali, are you ready with the breakaway rooms? You good? All right, you should get an invitation on your screen now. Nobody was back early, so I'm assuming that was a good conversation.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to take some feedback, not go into a debate or a discussion, share a few more slides, and then we'll have more conversations and then come back to the bigger room. So I'd love to hear just a high-level overview of what it was you were talking about. So room 1, Amanda, Craig, and Natalie, what came up for you guys?
I took a few notes. So we did spend quite a bit of time just getting to know each other because we've got beautiful representation. Amanda's got a really good story to tell around kind of running an organization with a social purpose, but a for-profit organization with a very social purpose, and how that played out. And Natalie's in a large retailer running L&D for a number of brands. Amanda was the CEO of of a British firm in South Africa. Both recall 50-50, so 50% on leadership, 50% on management, and that's interesting because, should it be 80-20? Should it be, and what would that look like? And both have a story of, in worldview language, this thing of an organization should be effective in a healthy way. That to balance those two, every time you raise the way things are done, the healthy way, a sense of the walls coming up, that the core, the operating core, the people who are running the organization are more interested in profit or the effective idea. And the healthy way piece sometimes is lip service, or now whether that's a management failing or a leadership failing, we didn't explore, but that's kind of where we were in the kickoff for the warm-up and the get to know each other breakout.
Cool.
Natalie, Amanda, I don't know if you want to add anything to that quick summary.
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. What I found, and in the training, that when I was a learning designer first in another company within the group, I did learning design. So I did curriculum design and e-learning and all of that. And then I moved over to another division where I'm now leading the function, the G&D function. But what I found, and in the training, and it kind of happened naturally, but you explained that there used to be a shift or a difference between leadership and management. But actually, as you move up and the level at which you are managing, because your title will always be manager, that's where the type of training starts becoming traditionally leadership, right? So it's just, for me, it's just a matter of the level of complexity of management training just goes up as, the level at which you are managing goes up. And that's where it kind of like, okay, so now we're looking at leadership traditionally. But actually, it's the same thing. You're using these traditional leadership concepts and methodologies or whatever to manage, because whether you are the CEO or whether you are the store manager in a store, tasks need to be done. The people that report to you are doing tasks, and that's like traditionally like management, but it's the way in which you manage it where the leadership aspects come in. So that's where we are.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do agree with you. And I think also that, yeah, the larger the organization, the more layers and levels and more glorified I think it becomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
think,
you.
Liesl, I would have added that the walls going up that Craig mentioned actually were the walls for our multinational partner overseas. So although we were running the business very humanly in South Africa, everybody had leadership training, everybody from ground up, basically, and also ownership training as well. And then management training were just for those with the manager responsibilities. But it was the overseas multinational head office that didn't like the fact that we were humanly oriented, if that makes sense. And I was even told not to mention it if we had visits, that we had social objectives and that we were humanly centered, just to focus on the money and the commercial, which did very well, Craig. We quadrupled the revenue of the business, we quadrupled the team, but I was actually asked, Liesl, by the multinational head office not to mention the social aspects and the human aspects of the business.
Sure. And that's the reality. Hey, that's what we deal with, and that's what we hear from our clients as well. The workshop we had yesterday, at the end of the day, almost everybody in that leadership team just expressed the gratitude of having a day of not talking about the strategy and the outcomes and the goals and just being together and getting to know each other. And talking about their roles as managers in the organization. And again, I was like, come on, people. Anyway, thank you so much, Amanda. Room 2, Richard, Lawrence, and Cecil, what did you talk about?
I see we were waiting for each other to unmute. We didn't designate a spokesperson. Yes, I think our consensus was there's definitely been a shift in emphasis of people development away from management to leadership. And in fact, the whole concept even of management from the days of POLC, Planning, Organization, Leadership and Control.
Clock.
Leadership was almost a subset of management. It's definitely been a shift, we agree. We were just warming up. In fact, Lawrence made a statement as the room closed, and I found myself getting a little bit excited, and I wanted to take the statement on, but yeah, just, and we acknowledge that they're not, what we've done is we've boxed them separately. We've boxed management and leadership into two separate boxes as though they're separate things. And you spoke about yin and yang, Liesl, and they're not separate boxes, but they are fluid things. What we do know is that, or I suggested that in the industrial age, emphasis was on specialization, execution, precision, getting things done predictably. But work has changed. The essential nature of work has shifted from that time, and more execution is being done by other modalities than humans. So it is an interesting, Liesl, you said you worked with a team, and the thing is, it was nice not to talk about strategy, but to talk about execution, but actually getting to know each other and being with each other was also valued. And those sound
Absolutely.
like...
Absolutely. It was more valued than anything was.
Thank you. So no conclusion. In fact, the debate was just warming up.
Okay. Thank you, Cecil.
I knew Lawrence would come.
Now, what I want to say is that if we had more time, I would have taken it a step further to my experience during the phase of work from home, this distant working, remote working, and how leadership and management actually played out and still playing out in that area. Because people are so fixed, they want to be leaders, but they only revert back to poor management practices, and that changed my comments about the company I worked for. And it was actually appalling the way they did it. And instead of just following the basics, plan, organize, lead, control, and make sure people are empowered to do their work and measure that, go back then and measure the outputs. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole new chapter that we can talk about if you want to later on.
Well, let's see if we get to it. Thank you, Lawrence. And I can only agree with you. We often work with newish managers and or people who are about to, who are in the pipeline for, being promoted. And how often they sit in our leadership development programs and they say, my manager needs to come on this program. My manager doesn't get this stuff. And we're like, okay, how do we take this message to your manager's manager so that they can send them on this course? Anyway, thank you, Lawrence and Cecil. And then room 3, Cherise, Mbali, and Vivian.
I think I'm the only one left because Mbali asked either myself or Vivian to speak. And I see Vivian's not on the call, is she?
No, she is still here.
Is she there?
I see her.
Yes,
But it's fine.
here.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. I don't know. We didn't say who would talk, but maybe just as a joint thing, Vivian will also share. But it seems like we have the same experience in terms of the management and leadership aspect, but mostly from a accountability point of view. I think especially where we find that managers do tend to shy away from HR initiatives as well, feeling that it's not their job. But I mean, when we presented a list of all the integrated talent management initiatives in our organization. I work for higher education. one of the universities. And when I asked the line managers, where are they not involved, or where does this list not touch what they do in their spaces? And they said, actually, we're involved in everything. So I says, yeah. My answer was yes, but you own those processes. We assist, help, enable, provide tools and all of those things. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you to roll those things out. And I don't know if we've transitioned enough or provided enough support or capacitated them enough to have that mind shift. So that's what I'm seeing in the high ed space. But yeah, also the focus on self-leadership. At the end of the day, we all leaders in whatever field we're playing at whatever level. But the managerial aspect, where you're looking at operations, operational tactical domains, there's an administrative element there that also they shy away from. We've got academics saying that they don't want to have to process leave applications and all of those things, or run with a disciplinary. So yeah, it's definitely role clarity and actually educating them on what leadership actually means from a managerial, that it's a component of leadership.
I absolutely agree with you, Cherise, and something you said there that really hit with me, that we find is the mind shift, the shift. And we often sit with new managers and we talk about, for example, the employee experience. And we have this slide with a job advertisement for somebody in a big bank that with the title of leader of the employee experience, all the moments that matter, blah, blah, blah. And say, would you apply for this role? And everybody's like, no. And then our next slide says, well, congratulations, you've got it. You've got the job because you are leading people, you are managing people, and you are you need to worry about the employee experience because they experience you more than anybody else. So yeah, that mind shift and then when that penny drops, it's sort of like, okay, yes. So how do I do it? And there's always the willingness once they get it. I guess processing leave is more boring, but yeah, thank you.
That aspect of serving others. If anyone follows Simon Neck, it's serving those in your charge. You're not in charge. It's serving those in your charge. I think because it's very inwardly focused with this leadership thing, whereas the managerial aspect is looking outward to help others.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Vivian, if you want to add anything, or Mbali.
Yeah, so thank you very much. My internet is not very strong, so I'm on off camera. I think that we had similar experiences to share, but my reflection of my current organization is it's a feminist organization, and therefore we are very big on feminist leadership, leading with empathy, to the extent that you find that a lot of leaders are now finding difficulty holding people accountable. So I think that is the aspect that, for me, when I think about leadership and management, I feel that it should be a blend. Management is really important, but the act of managing is what would really bring out the style of leadership that would inspire people to really perform and have that good experience in organizations. So just to add that bit, that experiences are very, very similar in our organization, but I find that because the organization is big on feminist leadership, we are losing a bit of the accountability and how leaders are really to manage, in terms of holding people accountable to be able to perform the job that they have been assigned. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to continue with what I wanted to share with you today, and then we'll go back to some more conversations. So I was curious to see if I asked Google and AI and Wikipedia and those things to see why this disconnect. And what I could come up with is three things. The historical one, which has been mentioned in this conversation, where historically we looked at as traditionally as management being the block thing, and lots of emphasis on stability, efficiency, compliance, that kind of thing. And leadership is the visionary, taking people along, people follow the leaders. Then there's the cultural stuff, and a lot of that comes into the pop culture and the business leadership, the business literature, that often portrays the leaders as heroic and visionary. And I was thinking about this with Richard Branson, for example. We, in the old WorldView Higher Certificate, in the strategy class that I used to facilitate most of the time, we would ask the delegates, if Richard Branson was your CEO for 1 week, what would change in your organization? And the answers were these, oh my goodness, the organization would be so awesome and people would be looked after and this and that and the other. And, and I always thought, sure, you like literally plug the Richard Branson figure that's portrayed in pop culture into the organization for a week. And everybody has this vision of the big change that would happen and how awesome the organization would be compared to how it is now. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And then, of course, the role expectations in the organization. If the organization sees you as some of the roles are more leadership orientated and some are more management, and management being A, B, C, then that does also cause this disconnect in the culture and in the organizations. So some of the research that I was looking at is yes, companies invest millions in senior leadership programs, and there's a lot of research about the 600 billion a year in the US, where thousands go to leaders and less than $1,000 a year goes to the manager. So in the end, what it came down to is between 3 and 8% of the development spend was actually towards management development as opposed to leadership development. And I mean, that's such a big difference. And then, of course, you've got your Gallup stuff that looks at engagement, and they say that 58% of new managers lack formal training. SHRM says, and this is something we always hear, that people quit bad managers, not bad organizations, but there's different opinions on that. Manager training boosts productivity by certain percentages. It cuts turnover by, some say 17, some say up to 20-something percent. McKinsey says 20. And then in a few different articles, it's around about 12% of companies that invest in management development in the US and UK combined. And that's when they don't just focus on leadership development, they actually focus on management. And then in the Times, they say that they've done some research in the UK that shows that 82% of managers are accidental managers. They are people who are just, they're technical experts, they're specialists, they're really good at what they do, and boom, they get promoted, and suddenly they're a team leader. And there's just no training. There's nothing that gives them the tools to do this. And this contributes to poor cultures, to high turnover, etc., etc. Then Mintzberg, that the people that knows WorldView knows we love Mintzberg and we love looking at his work. There's a beautiful video of him on YouTube where he's rowing around in his boat on this lake, and then they've got clips of him in his study and clips of him facilitating manager in action programs. And he has this thing where he says, just step back, watch the manager. And watch what they do. And he said they champion change, they join projects, they handle disturbances, they do deals. Managing is about collaborating, about controlling, about doing, about dealing, about thinking and leading and more. And all these things are blended. It's not this on top of each other, it's blended. And in the video, he talks about when he did his doctoral thesis at MIT years and years and years and years ago. He sat back and he watched managers. And the thing he came up with is they get interrupted a lot. And he said everybody was like thinking he's this absolute genius, that he wrote this in his doctoral thesis, that managers get interrupted a lot. And that's one of the problems where they work. And he was like, I'm not a genius. I literally just saw this and wrote it down. So I found that quite interesting. So if we think about what it is that frontline or middle management should be doing, it's a complex role, but it's a crucial role. And some of the things they should be doing is translating strategy into action, which we said earlier on. And a lot of the time in our classes, we get these middle managers saying, I'm frustrated by this because I don't know how to translate it into action. And I feel that therefore I'm doing less than what I can. I'm not contributing as much as I can, and I'm not helping my team to have the clarity to break the complicated strategy into the operational stuff of what we're supposed to do every day. Managers are supposed to coach and develop talent, and that's, again, that's the employee experience responsibility. It's the building teams, etc. They're supposed to surface insights from frontline to leadership. So this is they take the messages back, that their teams that work with the actual clients at the coal face, at the front face, how does that message go back to the people who actually make strategy and who makes the decisions? And then, of course, they act as culture carriers. We had this conversation in the workshop yesterday again to say, how do we influence the culture? If the culture is overworking and working on weekends and working at 11 o'clock at night, what do the team leaders do? And we were talking about walk the talk, because we always say walk the talk if you want to change something in your organization. And even when they do, they find that doesn't really change. And then this alignment across departments is coming up everywhere. And according to Mintzberg as well, the manager has this linking, he needs to link different departments and different roles to help everybody understand. So they are meant to lead and not just manage processes. But the uncomfortable truth is that they're not doing any of that a lot of the time on the ground. So managers today are seen as overloaded with reporting, admin, compliance tasks. They act as gatekeepers between top-down directives and burned-out teams, who they are supposed to develop and look after and empower. They're trapped in endless meetings, and this comes up time and again in the workshops that we facilitate. They really want to coach and mentor and develop people, but they're struggling to find the time. And they are rewarded to be risk averse and to enforce policy instead of leading. So most managers are quietly overwhelmed. They're quite disengaged and sometimes often invisible in most of the organizational improvement efforts, although they are supposed to be the people who believes in the change and who motivates others to want to change and to be the change leaders and the change champions, having no idea how to do that. So what we're seeing is not a lot of people in the organizations want to talk about it. So we get the junior managers that says to us, I wish my manager would attend this course, but who actually talks about it, and why not? And some of the reasons is that some of the senior leaders in the ivory towers are unaware of the daily chaos that managers face. And I find this interesting because were they not those managers once? How did they get to the ivory tower? Didn't they work their way up? And can't they remember the chaos that they faced when they were the frontline managers? And sometimes the HR teams hesitate to intervene. There might be political stuff, like if a junior person comes and complains about their manager, how do we handle that? And often it does fall on L&D or HR's shoulders to fix the problems. The middle managers themselves stay quiet because they might be labeled as this person is not leadership material, they're not really doing very well in their roles. And it often is easier to blame individuals than to actually challenge the system. So the result is often a toxic silence, or the conversations maybe around the water cooler or the sessions that we host sometimes, where they really use it as almost like a bitching session to complain about their managers and things that goes wrong, but it's not said when it's supposed to be said. And therefore, you get a lot of unnecessary turnover in organizations from both the team members and the managers themselves, that don't necessarily stick around. And we've heard this a lot, where the specialists and the experts are promoted into a role of leading people, and they don't get the tools and they don't get the support. And then often they feel like, I'm not good at my work anymore, and they might leave because of that. And you lose the good people. And then the hidden cost, if we don't look after the frontline managers or the middle managers, we don't spend on their development, we don't spend on empowering and supporting them, it doesn't just demoralize them, but it undermines the organization. So we've got these bottlenecks because decisions are not being made, innovation, and I'm hearing this in a lot of the organizations we work with. The team comes up with really nice ideas, but it doesn't get executed. It doesn't happen. It's almost like people don't have the guts to go implement what they thought of, or the implementation doesn't get supported. The employee engagement, employee experience scores, that kind of stuff plummets. High potential talent leaves due to poor leadership. There's very little organizational learning because we're not talking to each other, and we're not very happy in our roles, and we're not doing our best, and we're not being held accountable, and we're not learning how to lead and how to manage. And of course, the psychological safety that we know is so important in order to build trust, which is the foundation of teams, healthy teams according to Lencioni, and we know in storming, according to Tuckman, we need that. We need to build that trust. We need to get to know each other, and we need psychological safety for that, to have healthy debates and challenge each other, and for that to lead to accountability in teams. And this might be because we're asking one of the most critical layers, and again, I'm talking about many layers in the bigger organization, to operate with no support, no autonomy, and they don't really have time to lead. They are literally, like Mintzberg said, just being interrupted the whole day and not getting to what they want to, although they wake up with the best intentions every day and come to work with the best intentions. That doesn't necessarily happen. So back into the breakaway rooms. First of all, do you agree with what I've said? And then how do we fix this? How do we make a difference? Because we are, as a OD company, and as a company that really, really love leadership development and manager development, we're frustrated as well, because our clients are not spending on management development. We're sitting with frustrated delegates in our programs, and we can see this problem, but we don't know how to convince. And maybe that third question: how do we convince our world, the world that we operate in, that management development is neglected and is important? Maybe that's one of the ways to fix it. But then how do we convince them? All right. So back into the breakaway rooms for another 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and have a quick feedback session. There we go. Your invitation should be on your screen. I know that was short, and now we only have 16 minutes left to share. So I wish we had another hour, because I really want to know what you guys had said in your conversations. So let's start with some feedback. Amanda, Craig, Natalie, do you guys want to go first again?
I'm the luckiest guy in the room, because I had Natalie and Amanda, and wow, they shared a lot. And what we focused on was one question. Natalie put it on the table: how do you deal with poor performance? And in the exploration of that discussion was, what is the tone of management? What is the tone of leadership? What is the capability of management and leadership? You know, we have this picture in our heads of leaders setting direction and then maybe turning a blind eye, or just not showing up for the poor performance, or technical experts who are very good at the process but can't deal with the human side of getting people to align to process. We got the example from Amanda where the senior lead, the senior executives have a heart for people, and so that their whole approach is to deal with people, but surprisingly, to deal very directly with poor performance as well as good high performance as a way of developing strong human beings. That you don't develop as a person if you don't get that tough feedback that says you're failing here, you need to correct. So is that a leadership action? Is that a management action? You typically think of managers as nagging you when you're failing. Well, maybe that's what good leaders do. So the leader-manager thing didn't really come up. It was more about what happens when you get this poor performance issue. And we spent a lot of time on that. Natalie, Amanda, if you want to fill out any gaps there.
I just also want to add that just where the problem of taking technical experts, people that are really good at their jobs, and now making them, managers and by extension leaders of departments or teams, it's a massive problem. We've got a CEO in one of our brands that cannot deal with conflict to save his life. And he is an absolute retail genius. He is really, really good at the job, but he cannot. So now he's putting that pressure on his line managers that have to deal with it because he just absolutely refuses. And it's fine. It was fine when it was small, when there were few people. But the bigger you get, the harder it gets to put your head in the sand to have these difficult conversations and dealing with these difficult issues. So, I mean, yeah, it's just it's a conundrum that we find ourselves in at the moment in my space.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Amanda. Cheers, and thanks for your contribution, Amanda.
You're welcome. And I think the only thing I was going to add, Liesl, before I go, it's everyone speaking from the same notion. I think, Liesl, that ultimately, whether you are a leader or a manager, it's having each other's backs and it's inspiring and aspiring to be the best that you can be. At what you're doing. And if you take on a management role, it's having that discussion at the beginning before you take it on, that if you're going to take on a management role, it's going to involve these tough conversations. And so if you're not feeling confident in that area, then let's put you on a training program straight away to actually get you boosted up on that area. So sorry I have to go.
That's okay. Thanks for joining.
Lovely meeting you, Amanda.
You all too.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Cecil, Lawrence, Richard. Quick summary.
One of you go this time.
Wait, Lawrence.
So I was in the room with two anarchists who believe everything needs to collapse and break. Then we can start fixing. That's the solution.
Okay, now you've given my feedback. Thanks, thanks, Colin. Yeah, I think Colin is the voice of reason for us all. Or Cecil, sorry, Cecil, the voice of reason. I still don't have an answer. I think things are broken. I don't know how to fix it. It's only those who are willing to change, to fix, that I found that willingly come forward and say, listen, but I've got a problem. I don't understand how to do it. I've got a problem with managing my people in different situations, managing finance, whatever. And they then volunteer to the extreme of going for clinical counseling and therapy. Those people actually I found to be successes. But in general, where we've entered companies, even I've got two examples that I had of being invited to prepare a presentation for management and how management leadership can be approached in the company. It was turned down at the end of the day. HR was all up in the clouds. I think this was the next big thing, next big thing. I think McDonald's or something. They really loved it. But the moment it was presented to the management for final decision, they turned it down. And I think the only reason was that they realized we will expose their vulnerabilities and their lack of understanding. And I think they've measuring themselves against what we presented. They realized, but oh gee, this is going to put us in the spotlight. So it was turned down. How you fix it, I'm not sure. Can it be fixed? As I said, as Cecil also said, I think integrated approach eventually should be considered. But it's only, yeah, I think we also need to try and step away. If there's an organization that does not want to change, even if they give you all the lip service, I think step away, because you might just end up doing more damage than good to the process of actually changing from the process to be correct. So I don't know how to fix it, but I think please, Richard, also you come in, and Cecil also. Thanks. Richard,
Thank you,
all
Larry.
fine.
You're good. All right, thank you. Interesting perspective, and I hear you. But then we sit with these managers in front of us moaning about their managers, and you really want to fix it, and you don't want to walk away.
If I may just come in here quickly, Diesel, I think what I said is that the accidental management, when you said that is actually that sounds very well defined to me, and I think that made me think a lot of those people are accidental managers.
Yeah.
And maybe just on, I think Natalie made the point that they become technical experts that become managers. And I'm quickly thinking about it now, is that you will appoint somebody that can make or ensure that there's billions profit, but nobody wants to be in that individual's team. And those people are seen as the benchmark, they're the successes. Whereas you'll have another person, they'll take a bit longer, maybe just make 1 million less than a billion, but he'll have a whole team that wants to follow him. And I think that's the problem. Where we've also found it that it's the absence of a progressive or a progression matrix or a progression path for technical experts to progress in a company that force them to become or to accept leadership or management positions. And that's where the problem is. We have a dual path that you have specialist leaders or managers, which is somewhat different. They lead on a specialist and within specialist fields. And I think somebody mentioned about people, discipline, and etc. They don't need to do that because that's not their role. That's where you have functional managers that manage the function, and they take them on that wider classical management role. But you have chief and principal specialists that is on par, on the same job level, same income, but they don't need to do the people side of management.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, let's get feedback from the last room, Cherise, Mbali, and Vivian. Who wants to go?
Yeah,
Vivian.
thank you very much. I'll start, yes. So I think during our conversation, we all agreed or came to the realization that it is the balance between the performance of leadership and management rules that will really ensure organizational effectiveness. And just reflecting on my organization, as I shared, it is very clear that the capability gap now is on the management rules. But it's interesting how, if you look at the team, there is a group with very strong leadership skills, and then another group with very strong management skills. And it is interesting how each person or group feels that their skills is the best and what is needed. And I think that from this conversation, it's really the balance. So for me, it's to just go back to initiate that discussion for us to look at how we can work together, collaborate to get that balance. Already program where we do leadership, feminist leadership training for leaders and managers. And I think the need to also introduce a management training program so that that balance can be held. But also more importantly, how to facilitate spaces for reflection and learning so that we can all come to that common understanding and move together. And I think this discussion is also very timely for me because we are also developing a competency framework, and I see clearly the need to also highlight the management skills that are needed. Because if I look at even the competency framework that we have now, it's also very heavy on leadership skills, and the management area is lacking. And I'm happy to say that some of the effects that we spoke about, is something that we have been witnessing. Staff getting disengaged, leaders being promoted and feeling they do not have what it takes to lead and therefore leaving. Some of these things are showing, but we have never imagined that it was because of the lack of balance in leadership and management roles that were bringing all this. So for me, I think it's a very good learning, and I'm going back to start the discussion so that we all know the importance for the balance and work together to have that effectiveness to drive the organization.
Thank you, Vivian. It feels like we've made a little bit of a difference, and we've given you a bit of some ideas to go back into the organization with. That's wonderful. And thank you for your insight. I love what you said, because so much in life and even in leadership and management development and that personal self-leadership aspect is balance, right? It's balance. Anybody else from that group want to share? Sharice or Mbali?
Vivian summed it up perfectly, and some of the other points, it's what came up in the other rooms, like the technical experts being promoted. And also the highlight was really going back to look at the effects and highlight the performance issues and really find a language and a way to align them to this missing piece of management. That was the convincing part. How do we convince our world to go back to the performance? Because at the end of the day, the organizations need to perform. And if you come in with that angle of performance is taking a knock, then maybe you might get the attention and really bring evidence to support why management has an effect on performance. But Vivian summed it up nicely. Thank you, Vivian.
And thank you, Mbali. And
Thank you.
interesting how performance came up quite a few times in the discussion.
Sorry, Liesl, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Natalie.
Guys, I've now been invited to a budget meeting that I can't miss, that I have to attend. So I'm going to have to love and leave. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for this very, very valuable time spent. I really appreciate it. It was lovely
Good to
meeting
meet you.
Nice to meet you, Natalie. Good luck with the budget
Bye.
meeting.
Thank you. I need it. Bye.
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 And we also need to wrap up. It's 1:55. So I want to thank everybody for being here. You've definitely given me some new ideas and a little bit of a different way of thinking and looking at this conundrum. I like that Natalie said that, because it's another thing that's in my head. According to Mintzberg, that's something that can't be solved. But anyway, so thank you for being here, and our newsletter tomorrow will have a bit of a summary of what happens in what came up in today's cafe. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you again next month. Thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing, and thanks for playing, and thanks for chatting. Have a great, wonderful day.